So, Peter, thanks for joining us. I know it's been a very busy week for you. We last caught up in May, I think it was. How's the season went so far from your perspective then?
Well, it started off really well, to be fair. We got some really good results on the road. We were flying high at the top of the table for most of the start of the season. We had a couple of disappointing results at Redcar and Scunthorpe where we were ahead, and even Eastbourne as well. We were well ahead in those fixtures. In the main, it went really well, and then we came to the Edinburgh fixture, tough fixture through there at Armadale, and we were doing really well. And into heat 15 ahead, and I think even though the match was cancelled ultimately when Ulrich got injured, I don't think we'd have lost a 5-1 to lose the fixture. So I think the worst we would have done is a draw. But in the end, sadly, Ulrich went into the fence in the first bend in the heat 15, and that was where it ended. So we won that fixture, but at a massive cost for the team. And then it was really sad to see Ulrich go, because although we got Ulrich on a steal at the start of the season and his average has gone up to 7.96, but he was riding to like an 8.7, and it's very, very hard to replace that. But we cracked on. We came here on Sunday, and unfortunately lost to Edinburgh. Jai Etheridge tried his best for us, but he was never going to replace what Ulrich had been doing. So we lost that fixture, which was deeply disappointing, because otherwise I think we'd have won that fixture fairly comfortably. And then from there, a couple of good fixtures against Berwick home and away, where we won, and then away at Newcastle. That was probably the biggest disappointment of the season for Cammy and I at Newcastle, because it's a fixture we felt we should have won, and even our guest Stevie Worrell went quite well, so we can't even say it was from Ulrich. It just, the whole team didn't have a good performance that day, and it was really that day I'd say that was the catalyst for some of the changes that we brought in recently.
So on to the changes then. Obviously the first one on Friday night was announced here at the meeting. Tom Brennan was brought in. How did that come about?
Well, Tom's a rider we've admired for a long time. He came up here for the FIM qualifier at reserve and scored a barrel load. Had an amazing race against Chris Holder, where he managed to keep Chris Holder, the 2012 world champion, behind him for 4 laps. And just his whole demeanour, his whole attitude towards the sport really impressed me. Then from there, he became British under-21 champion at Redcar. And it was one thing, I was listening to the No Breaks No Fear podcast, the official GB podcast, and Tom Brennan was the guest on it. And I listened to it for the full hour, and I just thought, there's a kid who's really got his head screwed on, knows what he wants, knows where he's going, spoke very well about the sport, is very, very, very well backed. And I just think that, it would be a great addition to our club. Clearly, Tom at that stage was an Eastbourne rider, so there was no thought about doing anything this year. We'd been able to talk to Tom, and once the season's finished, potentially if he wanted to come. And then it just so happened that the Eastbourne situation arose, and it became obvious that the Eastbourne riders were going to be available for teams. We had a gap in Ulrich that we hadn't replaced at that point. And really the two things just came together. We spoke to Tom. He was delighted to be offered a position at Glasgow, and for us, we want that to really be a long-term partnership. We want to see Tom here for many years and watch his career blossom with Glasgow, as well as whatever else he does elsewhere in the UK or indeed in the world.
So perhaps even more out of left field, I know a lot of people were quite surprised at the transfer that was announced on Saturday morning of Marcin Nowak. Tell us about how that came about then?
Well, it was really on the back of the way the season was going. I just thought, Cammy and I just thought that, certainly after Newcastle, that we didn't have the strength to be able to compete once it got to the business end of the season. We'd probably already secured our spot in the playoffs, to be honest, unless, something disastrous happened. But, we don't go into this to be an also-ran to make up the numbers. We go in because we want to win, and, we've got to make decisions as tough as they can be that give us the best opportunity to win. So when we looked at it, we said, well, we looked originally before we could bring in Tom, we thought, well, who's available to replace Ulrich? And it was very, very difficult. There wasn't many riders that could replace Ulrich. I certainly couldn't replace what Ulrich was achieving on Ulrich's average. So we spoke to a couple of foreign riders that are already ridden in the UK. They were busy, they were in playoffs, and we said, well, you can bring a new rider into the UK, and Poland, there's no bigger country in the world for Speedway than Poland, and a Pole that's not ridden in the UK before comes into the championship on a 5-point average, which the way we built this team at the start of the season was that we always wanted a strong reserve. So we didn't have the maybe 3 or 4 out and out heat leaders that some teams have got and a weaker bottom end. We wanted to have a strong reserve that, in theory they would have moved, so someone would have dropped, someone would have gone up, and for whatever reason it's not panned out that way. So When the opportunity presented itself, we looked into it and we said, well, how do we find someone that's not in the Polish playoffs, that will be capable of coming in and hitting the ground running, most importantly that wants to come to the UK.
Yeah.
Looked at the type of tracks the riders ride, and then we had a couple of people over there that helped us with this, and then we came across Marcin, who I have to say has been absolutely fantastic to deal with. He's a lovely kid, really wants to come, and it is quite challenging to bring a new rider, and it's one of the many problems with Brexit. If you go back pre-Brexit, it would have been easy. Now you have to get an English test, a visa, certificate of sponsorship. It's really quite challenging. So you need to want someone who wants to do that to make it worth their while. So that's how we went about finding Marcin, and we're massively excited to see what he can do. I think he'll certainly be used to this track or suited to a track like this. It might be more interesting for him if he goes to Armadale, if we go to Armadale again, or if we go to other smaller tracks again. But that's we had to roll the dice ultimately, because we feel that we wouldn't have been able to win anything with the way things were going. And sadly, someone had to make way for Marcin to come in, and that was Justin. And it's just sod's law that Justin in his last meeting scores a paid maximum, and it was the same with James Sargent 2019 when the decision was made, or Ben Barker, go back further, and it's just the way sometimes it happens. But Justin's a great guy, he's done really well for the team. We want him still to be in around the club and help us to try and win something towards the end of the season, so we wish him well, and absolutely we look forward to see what Marcin can bring to the party.
And on that, when is Marcin expected to arrive in the UK? When is he expected to make his debut?
So, as I say, there's quite a few steps we had to go through in terms of you had to get a Great British endorsement, which we got, and Nicky at the BSPL has been extremely helpful on that. And then we had to get a certificate of sponsorship, and then you have to get a visa. So Marcin went for his biometrics tests on Monday, and the visa will take 5 business days. So there is a chance that Marcin may make his debut here on Sunday against Scunthorpe. That's what we very much hope for. But it may be that we need to wait until the following Friday against Plymouth. We will know that in the next few days. You can track the application. But in any event, he's going to come over, so he'll be here on Sunday in person, right, and hopefully riding. But if not, certainly we can introduce him to the fans, and he's keen to watch and see what different racing lines are used and that sort of thing.
And obviously other great news that kind of came out just after the deadline, that Craig will be back this week, and the fans will obviously be buzzing to have him back this weekend. Yeah,
it is great news. Craig was just off. He had a family issue, as he's come out and publicly said, and it's great that he's back. He is our talisman, and certainly around here he's amazing, as we all know. So it's fantastic to have Craig back, and I think fans will give him a warm welcome when he's here on Sunday.
So you mentioned obviously when you're talking about Tom, the sad news obviously about his spawn that came out last week. So where do you think the sport is as a whole at the moment? What's your kind of thoughts on that?
I think unquestionably that it's challenging times just now. It was very sad what happened to Eastbourne. There's some great people there, and despite the skirmish we had a couple of years ago, we do get on very well, and Trevor and Ian and Lee are great guys, and it's sad to see what's happened there. But I think the sport can have a bright future. There's some people who are much more versed in Speedway than me that I know are getting their heads together and looking at the future to see what we do. We all believe that in its purest form we've got a really good and exciting product. When you see 4 guys blasting around a track racing each other, it's just what goes around there, and some of the complications with the rules and some of the complications with the leagues, and just there's various things that are being discussed. But I'm hopeful that with the people that are involved in that now, that we can come up with a real bright future for the sport, and as we go into next year it can come back really strong. But there are challenges just now with a number of clubs, as I think most people are aware, but hopefully everyone can see through the end of the season now and come back in whatever shape next year, and the same clubs will all be here this time next year.
And how much do you think that COVID and everything that surrounded that, how much do you think that's impacted the Speedway?
It's definitely impacted it. I mean, you know the situation here. We were behind closed doors, and we took a massive hit on that. It wasn't quite as severe as that in England, but for some of the clubs, in their own way, it was, because they were still restricted to what they would usually get. And I think when COVID's here, people try different things, and a lot of people saved a lot of money, and maybe when they came out of COVID wanted to spend that money on doing different things, so potentially haven't come back to Speedway yet. But for me, we really need to grow the fan base. You've got loyal supporters who will come and will always come, which is fantastic, but we need to really look at growing the fan base as well, bringing more younger people in and making it exciting and slick and professional and everything else. So I think that's what the heads that are getting together should hopefully come up with a plan for that as we move forward, and we can look towards a bright future for Speedway in the UK.
Brilliant. And here specifically, is there any more news on anything or any kind of?
Well, we're working on. We're always working with partners to bring events to Glasgow. The FIM event was fantastic, and we will certainly look to do more of that next year. And we are working to bring a major event to Glasgow towards the end of this year. We've got nothing confirmed yet, but it will be massive. And what I would say is keep your eyes peeled, watch this space, and hopefully we'll be able to announce something in the next few weeks. It'll be very exciting again.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, Peter. Thanks for your
a
time
lot.
again.
Cheers.